Shalom, pick it up from where I last left off. As everything's about to go to shit very shortly here, as if it's not already, but things are going to accelerate.
Alas, the growing issue, and data centers are quietly draining your town's water and making you pay for it. As we've seen, and Mike Adams has had a lot of good reports recently, so I'm just going to a bunch of these.
They faked California drought hoax.
It's
Remember
going to
that?
eventually roll into you. If you guys haven't seen it, I did a video on it recently. I did a video called, let me see, where is it? Expose the Data Center Agenda, 3,500 planned data centers. And we went into Kevin O'Leary's 62 square mile data center in Utah. That's insanity how big that is if they're not using part of it for a camp. It's a surveillance center, but they're farming us, my friends. This isn't just, us using this for data. It's a surveillance center, but it's also farming us. The machine will soon be the lifeblood, and we will be the cattle that they eat.
Welcome, my son.
They are bringing in these insane provisions
to the machine.
Create these data centers, which will destroy water. So they will say, oh, well, we are net positive with water, but they don't mention is that water recycles natural on Earth, but what they're doing is they are drawing up villages around them and cities around them, towns around them to make it totally unsustainable. And how does that end? It ends with people having rations. And that's exactly how they'll be tracking it with those data centers. It's problem, reaction, solution, repeat.
With a microchip.
So this is extremely dangerous. Mike Adams wrote on X, if you follow him at Health Ranger, riddle me this, he says, by 2030, U.S. data centers are projected to withdraw approximately 80 to 150 billion gallons of water annually and to consume, i.e. lose to evaporation rather than return to the watershed, roughly 60 to 110 billion gallons annually. This is according to a March 2026 study
there we go.
by of the University of California, Riverside, in collaboration with Caltech, published as an RXIV preprint titled Small Bottle, Big Pipe, Quantifying and Addressing the Impact of Data Centers on Public Water Systems. The same study notes that the data centers' peak daily water capacity.
Yeah, look at how everybody has to have a smart meter, too.
697 to 1,451 million gallons per day of new water supply, comparable to the entire daily water supply of New York City, with the financial burden of the infrastructure estimated at $10 to $58 billion. And imagine how water prices will go up on top of that. So again, what they're claiming is a lie. This is absolutely devastating the watershed system. This also leads to, again, people paying more, shortages, and industry needing to pay more, which means your prices are going to go up on everything else. And on top of that, with the shortage, it means a shortage of what they're able to grow, what they're able to build. So this is a multi-tiered problem. And this comes I reported on this back in July of 2025. It's so interesting that everything seems to lead up to this. I don't believe in the coincidences here. The Department of Energy warns of 100x increase in blackout risk by 2030 on same day as Trump energy security executive order. Allowing 104 gigawatts of firm generation to retire by 2030 without timely replacement could lead to significant outages when weather conditions do not accommodate wind and solar generation, says the Department of Energy. But they're going along with it anyway. And again, this is before the Strait of Hormuz crisis, but they knew what was happening. This was already right after the fake ceasefire between the United States, Israel, and Iran back in July of 2025. And as we reported at the time, this would snowball. And again, it's all part of the World Economic Forum's agenda. When they say Trump is bringing down the world order, yes, it's the old world order. It's still bringing the new world order. You need to get rid of the old one, bring in the new one. The new one is this technocracy, this AI governance, this international digital system, and gulag, this technocracy. And these data centers are a great example of that. On top of that, with the shortages, isn't it interesting? And we reported on this. Let me see. When was this? We reported on this in September of 2023.
Yeah, here's this asshole.
Chicago Mayor Brian Johnson wants to open city-owned grocery stores. We talked about how Amazon was developing this, and we also talked about how recently Mamdani is also rolling this out at a huge expense, by the way, which makes no financial sense. Instead of stealing people's money and paying for it, why don't you help the people that are poor that you are saying this will help with, and while destroying, by the way, employment to a great degree and creating monopolies versus businesses that are competing to have the best product for the best price, which of course is a tenet of capitalism, which is dying in favor of corporatism and the correlation with the state. This is from the expose before, this is from June 2025, which I also say, UK government to announce supermarkets will police what is in your shopping trolley and limit purchases of unhealthy food. Again, and this is something they wanted to do in New York City, even under Adams, and now they're doing it, they're pushing it under Mamdani, and with the government running grocery stores, we have that as well, and now the UK is doing this while they're rolling out their digital ID. Is it more blatant? Could it be more blatant at this point? And as we reported in 2024 September, Army yourself, persecuted former FBI specialist, urges Americans to stock up on food and prepare for hardship. Yes, this is the most important point out of this because, tyranny comes under the guise of convenience, and they're creating this digital gulag system which makes things so-called easy in favor of national security and to make things better for the poor, which the state created in the first place, the environment in which they perpetrated in the first place. It is an absolute joke. But they come in with the solutions to the problems they created in the first place, and then they say, you're too dumb to realize that you have to stock up. That's what they think. They just think, oh, well, you're too dependent, and they depend on the dependence of the populace, and they expect people to be dependent. That's the whole basis of what the World Economic Forum is doing. Remember, and I reported on this in 2020, the next step would be, because they were testing, of course, the food rations and the food shortages, which were totally manufactured and fake, because they had them stocked up in warehouses going bad during 2020, during the COVID stuff. They were using that. And in 2022, I was proven right, unfortunately, by the World Economic Forum, where they said on their page called My Carbon, they said that COVID was a litmus test for compliance to see how much people will comply with authority rule, to eventually then use this as a testing ground to bring in technocracy. If you've heard it before, you'll hear it again, but if you haven't, nonetheless, as I mentioned so many times before, We saw Henry Kissinger meeting with Mao Zedong in the early 70s to create an alliance with China to save them from a starvation event, because that's what happens in communism, and that led to a monopoly for trade in favor of them, which the United States is still pretending to fight to this day. And that's what Canada is involved in right now with Mark Carney's New World Order he declared with China with a $1 trillion trade deal, and moved into BRICS and all that kind of stuff, which is indiscernible from the World Economic Forum's overall agenda. World Economic Forum, their whole agenda comes from the propping up of China. China, under the Trilateral Commission's rule with Zbigniew Brzezinski and the Rockefeller Foundation, propped up China as a guinea pig state for technocracy long ago and invested in this and propped them up for trade in order to make sure that they would gain this ground and then bring in social credit, sesame credit by the early 2010s, and lead into what would be scaled out worldwide, which we see now, which is in fast development. We see the European Central Bank release their digital euro. We have, of course, the issues of the digital IDs in places even like Missouri, where they're using it for internet verification, age verification, to stop children from watching pornography, which sounds good, like, hey, we don't want them watching that, but
there it goes.
Your job. The
it's already happened in Babylon.
So that you can access internet without giving your information out. They're tracking and tracing everyone everywhere. They have the digital IDs mandated in the UK for migration, but even if it's not mandated for everyone else, as Keir Starmer said himself, well, good luck taking part in the world in any way if you don't sign on to it. And this is what's crazy. It's like that is exactly how they do it. It doesn't have to be a CBDC, for example, central bank digital currency. It could just be, a private company like X Money, or one of these companies I reported with Mark Gonzalez recently here at WAM about the AI-powered banks like Augustus Bank, which I urge people to check out the video on. Very important. These digital systems will happen regardless of if they're private or public. In fact, if they're private, it works better for them because if they're private, it allows them to create a system that, a convenience, and step around constitutional law.
So there you go. Welcome to the digital all, where he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive an implant in their head or in their forehead, right? I mean, in their hand or in their forehead. Shalom, first and foremost, like to give all praise to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakakadash. Double honor to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone who are Jesus' truth and sincerity. And shout out to the Akims out there in the four corners of the earth who claim his truth. Bracha the Yahweh, Bracha the Yahweh Shai, Shem Rakakadash, Bracha Tum. So they got to give you the illusion that Christians, Jews, and Muslims are all fighting against each other. It's all bullshit. It's all faked. But it's done to give you the illusion that all three are at each other. Islam versus Christianity versus Judaism. The Talmud. 3 killed in California mosque shooting. I went into this before, but nonetheless, they got another shooting here. 2 suspected teenage shooters are dead. Law enforcement officials said the attack is being investigated as a hate crime. Oh boy. So here we go. And, they got to give you distracted with another shooting.
Officers to try to get to safety.
So the news is covered everywhere about this shit.
Producers, please interrupt me if we do get some.
I'm not dealing with it. But here we go.
Look, it's active right now. There's a live shooting right now. It's shooting right now. There's nowhere the fuck to go. Where do I go? Go straight, man. Go this way? Blocking everything, bro. Look. Shit.
Yep, not another stage shooting again. Yep, because they have to set it up in the neighborhoods to make you believe it, right? But nonetheless, though, this guy who's a whistleblower is number 1 on Mossad's list. So let's take a look at this. So nonetheless, though, whistleblowers, Tucker Carlson's on the list because he's more popular than Alex Jones, and he's getting a lot of attention. So, of course, he's on the hit list. So don't be the least bit surprised something happens to him like Captain Kirk.
So a former IDF intel officer, Shael Ben Ephraim, who we've had on the show many times before, says that Tucker Carlson is target number 1 on Mossad's assassination list.
To assassinate you, they could, and most likely they could do it in a way where people wouldn't even know it was an assassination, because you're not protected in a bunker. They don't have to blow you up. There's various ways they can do it. The good news is I don't think that they're going to try to kill you. I'm not, just to be clear, I'm not worried whatsoever. I'm at all, 0 worries. But it's more of a hypothetical because a lot of other people obviously worried. Of course they could. Of course they could. They wouldn't even be a problem. Of course, if a lot of people were speaking out against Israel and been dead, people would notice and it would backfire. But in terms of the technical ability to do it, I don't know your lifestyle and don't give me any details, but I just don't think it would be that difficult. Even if you have security, if you have good security, I don't think it would be that difficult. I'll tell you sorry, go ahead. The number 1 person on their list, by far, is Tucker Carlson. He is considered enemy number 1 by Israeli services. Touch him. I'm not saying they'll touch them. I haven't heard that they would. But that's what, if there's one person who's being monitored carefully and there are plans and contingencies for it, it'll be Tucker Carlson. Candace Owens maybe number 2. I think they take it less seriously, but still, those are 2 people I've heard Israeli intelligence people mention.
Yeah, okay. I don't put it past the Israelis at all. You know, Mario says, oh, no, they wouldn't do that. What do you mean they wouldn't do that? Yeah, they probably would. I mean, they do it all the time in Iran. They're assassinating people constantly, and many of us suspect that Charlie Kirk's death had something to do with maybe the Israelis. I mean, after all, if you're Israel and you felt that you were losing the support of the American people, who are you most likely to target? You've got a young man who's got a lot of other young men following him, and he's saying no war with Iran. He's staunch about it. He's going to the White House all the time and telling Donald Trump no war with Iran. He's saying, yeah, we want the Epstein files. He supports Thomas Massie, and you want to be, as the state of Israel, you want to be against all of those things. You don't want to release the Epstein files and expose your blackmail operation against the U.S. and many other global leaders. You don't want to, obviously you want support for your war in Iran, and you want to kick out actual America First congressmen, as we have Thomas Massie right now, the fight of his life, going up against the Israeli lobby. So I don't put it past the Israelis to off anybody that they think is a true threat to them, and Tucker Carlson is a threat. He has a huge following. He's got a lot of respect from a lot of people, and he's saying a lot of things, and people are feeling a lot more emboldened following his lead because he's brave enough to actually say things, and these are the types of things he's saying.
Mary Matelson is spending whatever it takes to take the seat away from him because he committed the crime of describing how things actually work in the U.S. Congress. Anyone who gets the idea that maybe I'll get to Congress and tell the truth about how things actually work will be crushed. If they are successful in doing this, crushing a man, defaming a man, slandering a man, attacking his family, purely for the crime of telling the truth about them, about how they operate, about the nature of the Epstein class, then you have to wonder, why are we voting in the first place? What is the point of all of this? Is there a reason to participate in the process? If in the end some Israeli casino lady can come in and just determine the outcome, that's not democracy. It's just straight up teeth-bared oligarchy. It's shut up and obey. And so while we can, it's probably worth doing whatever it takes within the bounds of the law to prevent that from happening. Because crushing Thomas Massie for the crime of telling the truth is itself immoral. And yet in Washington, the only people who are punished are those who told the truth. And at some point that has to stop. The system itself lacks all of it.
Yeah, I mean, look at this. Thomas Massie is currently, the election is open. Kentuckians, is that what we call them? They are out there voting. Hopefully they're voting for Thomas Massie. But look at this. Ed Galrain, it says on here, Ed Netanyahu Adelson, received $15.5 million from the Israeli lobby. That is just in direct campaign funds. That does not take into consideration the PAC money that is being sent, that is supposedly done without the coordination of the campaign. Right? So that's how Super PAC money works, is they can spend and basically flood the market with their advertisings. They have unlimited amounts of money that they can spend. It's considered free speech, and they can do that. So as long as they don't coordinate with the campaign, then no rules are broken. And at this point, they have doubled that amount of money, if not a little bit more, maybe $30, $40 million that they flooded into this campaign. The Israeli lobby, and Thomas Massie, look at that, has taken not a single dime. And not one of the Israeli lobby groups is working on behalf of Thomas Massie. Speaking of Thomas Massie, so here we have the Israelis, right? And they're trying to take out 2 of our top America First voices. Tucker Carlson, who's the #1 America First voice in media. A lot of people following him, a lot of people listening to him. And then you have Thomas Massie, the #1 America First member of Congress. And Israel, in one way or another, is trying to take them out, because we're not really truly a free nation. Look at this. Thomas Massie said, or he was on, I was going to say,
yeah, of course.
For the CBS interview.
You got a fierce king and cruel lord ruling over you.
Are you anti-Semitic? What type of question is that? What do you expect a person to say? Yes, I am. Thanks for asking.
There have been more than $32 million spent on a primary in this congressional district, which is now the most expensive House primary ever in the United States. Is it worth it?
You'd have to ask Miriam Adelson on May 20th if it was worth it. Because, they tried to buy my vote for 14 years and it was never for sale. Now they're trying to buy a seat here in Kentucky. I think they underestimated the reserve price of my constituents. They waded into this. They thought they could buy the seat with a couple million. That didn't work. And now they're throwing good money after bad. The thing that surprised me is how much money we've been able to raise. I don't have 3 billionaires who want to just throw their money away. I've got the grassroots, tens of thousands of donations. Average donation for me is about $80. And we've been able to go toe-to-toe. A lot of that $32 million is coming from our side, but it's coming from regular working Americans.
When you say that they spend money to try to buy the seat, who are you talking about specifically?
I'm talking about the Israeli lobby, AIPAC, Republican Youth Coalition, Miriam Adelson, Paul Singer, and John Paulson. These are the groups that have given 95% of the money to my opponent because they're mad at me over foreign policy. Now, what's interesting is my policy has always been, no country is special, and no country deserves my constituents' taxpayer dollars. So I've never voted for foreign aid to Egypt, to Syria, to Israel, or to Ukraine. But the ones in Israel, since they're the biggest recipients of it, that makes them a little bit mad.
What's so wrong about helping defend Israel from Iranian threats?
We've got that. I mean, at least with NATO, there's the promise of a reciprocal arrangement. With Israel, it's completely one way. And they've drug us into wars. They've convinced us that Iran is just days away from a nuclear weapon, and they're perpetually that way. This is not a war. Israel, for instance, funds abortions publicly. I think a lot of Republicans would be aghast to know that we're giving $3.8 billion a year, every year, to a country that funds public abortions.
You know that kind of criticism doesn't sit well with fellow Republicans, at least in the House Republican Conference, that there are others who've accused you of all sorts of things regarding Israel, regarding the state of Israel, regarding the Israeli government, regarding Jewish Americans. Are you anti-Semitic?
They're trying to tell you that it's anti-Semitic. For me, to expose the fact that the Republican-Jewish coalition has spent millions of dollars in this race. That a dual citizen, Miriam Adelson, who even Trump says is more loyal to Israel than the United States, has spent millions of dollars in this race. Those are mere facts. And it's really...
Yes or no? Are you anti-Semitic?
Oh, hell no. I'm hell no anti-Semitic. But here's the danger that AIPAC runs. They've been too cute by half. They've tried to get Mike Johnson, and he's willingly done this, conflate in resolutions on the House floor that anti-Zionism equals anti-Semitism. Or even worse yet, if you don't support Benjamin Netanyahu's war in Gaza, then you're anti-Semitic. That's absolutely false. And it does Jewish Americans a big disfavor to equate the two.
I mean, what do you expect somebody to say when you ask them, are you anti-Semitic? This is not a real question. It's not a real question. Because even if somebody was totally and completely anti-Semitic, and by every definition we all say, yeah, they are, they're not going to answer yes. So this is not a real question. This is just flexing on the side of the journalist. I don't know what this is, but it's the most ridiculous question. And it's just, well, Thomas Massey is out there campaigning for his life right now. We are in the home stretch. I don't think the polls are closed yet. They'll close probably 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock tonight.
Well, there you go, and the illusion of voting, right? But nonetheless, though, there's that word, and they're going to use it to shut down free speech, because that's what they want, is everything you say can and will be used against you, right? And then you got this going on in Fuckfornia, as you know, that fires start, but they very seldom ever put them out. They let them just burn, because there's been a plan to burn California. It goes all the way back to the car fire, and of course the Mendocino fire that happened at the same time. Then you had the Delta fire. You had all kinds of fires, but they never put them out. Paradise burned, and the Dixie fire, that burned for like 6 months straight. They didn't put it out. Why? Because they're told to let it burn. Breaking: Sandy Fire has seen a massive uptick in intensity with the wind shift, because of course, like everything else, though, they don't put out fires, they just let them burn. New evacuations issued in Ventura County, California. Evacuation orders for Zone Meyer Canyon 01, Shesburger 1, and evacuation warning for zones. So, like everything else, though, here's a little map of the fire. And it's no surprise that, nope, they're not putting it out. Of course not. They got too much agendas to push. And why not just have a fire going on? Senators propose to head off automatic draft registration by repealing Selective Service. Yeah, I don't see that happening. But nonetheless, though, this is what's happening. Bipartisan bill to abolish Selective Service system and end preparations for military draft has been proposed in each session of Congress since 2019, but has yet to get a hearing on a floor vote in either House or Senate. The timing of this bill is more critical than ever. Unless Congress takes action before the 18th of December 2026, the SSS will start collecting data from other federal agencies to automatically register draftees automatically. D.C. is currently reviewing regulations to implement that change in the draft law, which was buried in the anal defense bill enacted in 2025, December. So, like everything else, though, people are going to be automatically drafted, but they're trying to repeal it, which I find interesting because you see that same thing happening with the MOTB, trying to repeal anything requiring microchips. That's been in there, but it's going to happen worldwide. They are going to mandate this thing worldwide. It's just a matter of time. But like everything else, though, with the hantavirus and other scamdemics, that's what they're trying to do, is keep people in fear. Just keep the fear of it around so they can usher in everything else. So just keep the fear of it around, get everybody on this subject again, just so they can usher in, mandates. But like everything else, though, you always see this devil popping up.
The pandemic, sadly, was fairly predictable, and it won't be the last pandemic. The next one could be far more severe.
Yep, here we go. And remember, they try to push monkey butt.
Using those to tighten border checks for travellers arriving from India after an outbreak of the deadly Nipah virus.
UK health officials have issued a health warning after cases of deadly Nipah virus were confirmed in India.
Experts are calling for stricter border measures as concern grows over the Nipah virus.
Thai authorities are stepping up monitoring measures following new confirmed cases of the Nipah virus.
I mean, this one, it killed millions. It was awful. We got the vaccine. Actually, President Trump's leadership was factoring getting that out quickly. And so when I spoke to him, I said, okay, here's some other medical innovations, including a thing called an HIV cure that could be accelerated. So, we should be more prepared.
Yeah, more people died after getting the vaccine, right?
The Nipah virus were detected in India in the state of West Bengal, but there are concerns the outbreak would spread. The virus has a fatality rate of 40 to 75% according to the World Health Organization. So it's deadlier than the COVID virus, and there's no vaccine for Nipah. So authorities in India are taking no chances. At the same time, several airports across Asia, in Thailand, Singapore, Malaysia, Hong Kong, they're taking steps to screen passengers for any symptoms. Nipah is a zoonotic virus that's transmitted from animals, usually through bats. It doesn't spread easily to humans, and it can also come from contaminated food. But when it does,
Well, here comes Nipah virus.
And experts say pneumonia and other respiratory symptoms can develop, but the most serious complication is encephalitis, or inflammation of the brain.
We'll have to prepare for the next one. That, I'd say is really getting
Outbreak is at the center of global interest. Meanwhile, at the forefront of the laboratory diagnosis of the hantavirus outbreak linked to the MV Hondius cruise ship is the medical scientist heading the Center for Emerging Zoonotic and Parasitic Diseases at the National Institute for Communicable Diseases, the NICD. Dr. Jacqueline Veya and her team spearheaded the laboratory diagnosis and lifted the veil on what the world now knows with certainty is the Andes variant of hantavirus.
It was not a working day, it was the workers' day weekend. So it was the 2nd of May.
Like you can believe any of these devils.
Victoria, and I had a discussion with one of the
They're all liars.
telling me what they're saying, and we were talking through the possibilities, and we decided that we're going to be testing for hantaviruses, because this may be hantavirus pulmonary syndrome. So got in the car, drove to Joburg, got into the lab and started doing the tests, and within a couple of hours we were able to give the doctors the results.
And monkeys fly out your butt. That's why they call it monkey butt.
Helps the doctor to sort of hone in on what they're dealing with. And how
Which is by fucking someone up the ass. That's how you get monkey butt.
The containment responses for the outbreak.
This was an unusual and unique laboratory diagnosis on South African
Gotta
shores,
laugh at
yielding
this shit.
scientifically led, informed decisions that steered the subsequent global public health response.
So it's unusual because it's the first time that you're actually diagnosing a case of hantavirus of pulmonary syndrome in South Africa.
A fake virus, yes.
For other hantaviral diseases, mostly the ones that you will be finding in the European context. So this was a first for South Africa, but we were always ready for the unlikely. That's our business in this particular laboratory. So the investigation itself, not necessarily unusual, but the outbreak is certainly unusual. A very rare condition, and then the whole outbreak scenario on a cruise ship, that's not been reported before either.
Categorized by health experts as zoonotic diseases, these are infectious diseases that can be transmissible from animals to humans, including from rodents.
Yep, rat shit, bat shit, dirty old twat. From a rat virus to a bat virus. Or bat virus to rat virus. Whatever. If you believe them.
South American countries. It's not found in South Africa, it's not found on the African continent. It's transmitted from these rodents to people through close contact, either through bites, but also through contact with the infected feces, urine, and saliva. And then with Andes virus, unlike other hantaviruses, you can see transmission from human to human, but at a very low.
So yeah, if you're sniffing rats in the butt, you might catch
Some of the
this.
symptoms that have been associated with hantavirus may sound familiar to many people.
So hantavirus initially presents very similarly to flu, influenza. So typically, viral infections that give us muscle aches, they can give you headaches, fever. Some people might even have some gastrointestinal symptoms like abdominal pain and diarrhea.
However, she cautions that the Andes variant is distinctively unique, describing vital factors.
But you're not getting diarrhea and other things from the fake foods you eat.
Respiratory viruses we're used to.
No, it's got to be this hantavirus.
If you can get person-to-person transmission of the hantavirus, it's generally prolonged contact and close contact. If you think of somebody sharing a household, a partner.
Oh no, 666, 6 feet apart.
It's just walking past somebody or being in the
666.
is not how it spreads.
She also elaborated on the case management of patients once hospitalized.
There's no
So you get all this horse shit, right?
That functions as a global early warning system for countries to practice international response to power from the truth.
In South Africa, we don't have
Control and prevention, alongside the Department of Homeland Security, implemented mandatory enhanced travel screening, strict entry restrictions, and a temporary suspension of visa services for travellers originating from outside.
You see what's going on, right? Shutting down services because these fake diseases.
By the World Health Organization, which officially labelled the rapidly escalating outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo and neighbouring Uganda a public health emergency.
There we go. There it comes. World Health Organization says.
Situation. But we head back over to the Gulf, where the Qatari Prime Minister Sheikh.
So there you have it. Spreading diseases, right? Making you believe. Futures fall as momentum cracks grow with yields and oil higher. So you got this crisis going on at the same time while they're using fears of a pandemic. Just continuing the uptick in prices. U.S. equity futures are lower, set for a third drop in a row as traders wait for futile signs of progress toward a peace deal in West Asia. And this, well, he says he's going to blow up the kingdom come, so I don't think there's going to be a peace deal, but you see what's going on there, right? Is Operation Northwoods 2.0 here? Pentagon warns Cuba is preparing to launch massive attacks against Florida and U.S. interests in the Caribbean. So now they're really trying to push forward this regime change in Cuba by saying that they're going to attack. Oh no, not another false flag. Pentagon warns Cuba is preparing to launch massive attacks against Florida and U.S. interests in the Caribbean. So now they're trying to say that Cuba is looking to launch aggression. Yeah, with no power and all that. Yeah, they're going to launch a war of aggression. Who launched their war of aggression in West Asia years ago on the pretenses that they had weapons of mass destruction? Who did that? Was it Saudi Arabia? No, but they were complicit. No, the U.S. The U.S. always lies, right? Here we go. The Epstein class and Big Pharma. What they're doing to poison you to make you think you got disease. And they are spreading disease. But they're doing it in the foods you eat and the air that you breathe. They're chemtrailing you, etc. And getting you to take their fucking vaccines if you're retarded enough to take them. So a recap on everything that's transpired within the last week.
So the news cycle is like 20 seconds long, and of course that's by design. Just like the TikTok shorts and the Instagram shorts, the Rumble shorts, the YouTube shorts, you're digesting this information at breakneck speed. And then it's just on to the next thing. And then things get memory hold, they get glossed over. We talked about that, the things that shouldn't get glossed over. Remember when the ballroom was like the center of discussion? Everybody got the talking point. Build the ballroom right now. And then all of a sudden that just kind of went away. And you may not have caught this. I haven't seen a whole lot of people blasting this out anywhere. It hasn't gone viral anyway. But Trump was actually talking about the ballroom, which is where we start with the base report right now. Frankie Stocks is here. 3 minutes is on the clock. Go.
Thanks, Stu. So yeah, Trump is back out touting his ballroom. It was just recently when he said now it's going to be twice the size.
But you're a stupid person for questioning it.
Twice the size as originally planned. And now just today, Trump was out showing off the construction site to a group of reporters. He's doing the whole real estate developer thing, showing off his big third temple project in D.C. And he says that underneath the White House ballroom, there's going to be military hospitals, there's going to be research facilities, there's going to be offices. And very interestingly, he said the ballroom is going to serve as a shield. He said this is going to serve as a shield for what's underneath. And I think this is the truest thing that Donald Trump has said. And I don't know if we could say in recent memory, in documented history, whatever time frame we could assign it to, this is the truest thing I've heard this guy say in a long time, if not ever. This is a shield for what's underneath because this ballroom is meant to cover up what is underneath. Data centers, research facilities. What the hell are research facilities? This is a legitimate question. When they say research facilities, are they referring to cloning facilities? Are they going to have second and third generation Zorro Ranch sex slave clones being produced beneath the White House? I mean, we at this point, we know who these people are. These are questions that legitimately need to be asked. What the hell are you going to be researching beneath this White House ballroom that you're forcing the American people to pay $400 million for? At the very least, we all know how these government projects are. They always massively exceed what they say they're going to cost. And so $400 million, that's just the bare minimum buy-in price here. But yeah, Donald Trump says that the ballroom is going to serve as a shield for what's underneath. And my big takeaway from that is, yes, exactly, it's a shield because it's running cover for what's underneath. Now, staying in D.C. here, Chip Roy, one of these screen actors from the big WWE wrestling match.
I really hope that shield doesn't fail at the time that Trump is hosting like one of his regular transgender parties. Or when he's celebrating with LGBTQ, or when he's, lighting a menorah at some time. Gosh, I really just hope nothing bad happens, and that the shield doesn't fail. I just really pray that nothing bad happens. Anyway, go ahead, Chip Roy.
Yeah, that would be a real shame if something happened to all the freaks in the dog masks hanging out with Trump. But yeah, Chip Roy, he plays this big tough guy act in the WWE ring of D.C., and he's filed a bill now to ban what he refers to as foreign adversary nationals from purchasing homes in the United States. And it's like, foreign adversary nationals, why not ban all foreign nationals from purchasing anything in the United States? Why not ban all foreign nationals from being present in the United States? This is
that would get rid of the Zionist lobby, wouldn't it?
Headlines by filing worthless waste of time bills just like this one. This is a waste of the taxpayers' time. It's a waste of the taxpayers' money. Everything these people do is a waste of the taxpayers' time and money by design. These people are ripping off the American people. It's all fake. It's all a ruse. And this is a prime example of it. Chip Roy banning foreign adversary nationals from buying homes. And Donald Trump was in an interview with Sean Hannity days ago saying it's a good thing that the Chinese are buying up farmland in the United States. So are the same people who told us that the Chinese are public enemy number one for years, as they blamed them for everything that Israel has ever done, are they now going to tell us China's not your adversary anymore because they bought up so much farmland that now we've just got to let them have it? I mean, it's just, these people are ridiculous. But it's another one of these fake goy slop headline grabs. And here's another one, and a lot of people may have seen this popping on social media over the past 12 hours or so. Trump RX has rolled out really full force, and they're cutting propaganda ads in the White House for Trump RX. This is this merger of the Trump administration, even more so than they were already merged with Big Pharma. This is
you got that butt fucker
this is true
RFK Jr. there.
In the state. And the Trump administration has merged with Big Pharma to sell Big Pharma drugs to the American people. And what they say is a reduced cost. It's not a reduced cost. They mark these things up to absurd prices, $6 million for a pill, and then they cut it down to $271,000, and they tell you that you've really gotten yourself a good deal. You're getting the presidential deal. That's what they're calling these things. You get special presidential deals on Big Pharma drugs that are endorsed, I guess, endorsed by the White House, by their merger with Big Pharma. And as they were promoting this at the White House the other day, Trump had Mark Cuban there. Actually, you can see him right there. There's Mark Cuban at the White House. You know, he was supposedly some big anti-Trump zealot. Well, now here he is poisoning the American people right alongside Donald Trump. And there's something very interesting that I want to point out about Mark Cuban being at the White House for this, because there's been this merger, another merger, you could say. You know, there's the merger of Big Pharma and the government. Well, there's this strange merger, or maybe it's not so strange when we think about who all these people are, of the White House, the Trump White House, and the cast of Shark Tank, and people in the orbit of the Trump White House and the cast of Shark Tank. So you've got Mark Cuban there at the White House helping Trump poison American citizens with Trump RX. You've got Kevin O'Leary developing data centers in drought-stricken Utah and acting as a pro-Trump propagandist on CNN. The guy's a Canadian, and he's acting as a pro-Trump propagandist on CNN. And then you've got Barbara Corcoran from the Corcoran Group in New York City, who employed, apparently, Erica Kirk as a real estate agent. So when you think of who all these people are, it's like on the surface, hey, yeah, what the hell? Why is there this merger of the White House and Shark Tank? It's, oh, well, these people are the Epstein class. That's why, and that's why Erica Kirk is linked to them as well, because these people are the Epstein class. But it's every single time the usual suspects. So whether they're poisoning Americans, whether they're developing data centers, it's the same cast of characters, the same people every time. Like you call it, Stu, the pipeline. It's no truer phrase out there to describe it. But back to you.
It is. It's the pipeline. J.D. Vance is in the pipeline. All of these people are being positioned. They're being jockeyed around. You know, Janine Pirro from Fox News, Dan Bongino from Fox News, Pete Hegseth from Fox News, Kash Patel, who's all over Fox News all the time. These are the people that went from having breakfast with friends or being the wives of newly assassinated, political activists, somebody who I believe in Charlie Kirk was absolutely going to make a run for president. And I think that in the pipeline, you have fluidity. It's constantly changing based on the performance of these actors on the casting couch. They're given a role, and then they get promoted. So you had Randy Fine, who was given a role as a Florida state legislator. And what did he do there? He sponsored legislation, which was ultimately signed on Israeli soil.
Goddamn fucking gutter rat.
In Florida made it illegal for you to criticize Israel by handing out flyers, making people aware of Israel's control over the United States government and our church and Hollywood and entertainment and banking and finance, et cetera, et cetera. And then he was caught on video subverting the American political process, engaged in sedition by voting for other members when he thought nobody else was looking. And then the next thing that you know, bang, he is a U.S. congressman running Florida 6th to federalize all of that stuff. Well, then you also have, the shifting of the pipeline in the way of Charlie Kirk, for example, who was a good little goy. He was a great little Shabbos goy. He was, a wonderful shill for Israel. Turning Point USA was an Israeli operation the entire time. It was a propaganda arm in the alt-right, the war-embracing pro-Israel, neocon, GOP, Republican establishment, RNC right, the mainstream Trump right, until it wasn't. Until Charlie Kirk had a documented on-video real-time awakening where he was citing the multifaceted occupation that I just briefly glossed over. And so then, boom, he's gone. Just murder him. And then I think they thought that Erica Kirk, who they installed immediately as the CEO of Turning Point USA, what we now know to be a billion-dollar organization, she was in the pipeline, I believe, to be alongside J.D. Vance. And I think Charlie Kirk probably was, while he was alive, going to be a running mate to J.D. Vance, Vice President Palantir, Vice President Body Snatcher, and had he not been a body snatcher flying around with Charlie Kirk's probably still warm body on Air Force Two. Like, who made that arrangement, by the way? Who calls the vice president, hey, we got a body for you? And foregoing all of Utah's state laws when it comes to autopsies being performed in deaths under suspicious circumstances, I think it was pretty suspicious. I don't know. They circumvented all of that, got him up in the air in Air Force Two on a SAM flight. These SAM flights all over the place. And then Erica Kirk was slated, but I think that her behavior has just been so effing bizarre and weird and unhuman. I mean, here they have her in this black hat, dressed in all black like a breeding ninja, like we said yesterday. Like a psychopath, breathing heavily, and nobody likes her. No real people actually like her or trust her. And so she's just been kind of, quietly moved out of the pipeline after they had that propaganda video, which was all coordinated. WWE, it's Hollywood, it's theatrics, it's a movie, it's a feature film, where they directed, the amplification of that video of her leading the false flag at the White House Correspondents' Dinner that Trey Yiggs clearly had advanced knowledge of, and so did others at Fox News, part of the pipeline. I didn't see Dana Perino there, but she's another example. Actually, she just went the other way from the Bush administration back over to Fox News after being a war criminal propagandist for all of those years for George Bush. So, there is a pipeline, and you can see it. And if you have any kind of discernment at all whatsoever, it should be very obvious to you who the runners-up are. Nick Fuentes, a great example. This is a guy who aspires to have political power inside of this fake, two-party apparatus, this governmental infrastructure that's been presented to the American people as, your choice. You've got the red Zionist pedophile or the blue Zionist pedophile. Which one do you want to vote for?
Yep, exactly. And it never gets any better because it's the same Zionists, the same pedophiles. And so, it's all scripted. But yeah, you can see why, Tucker Carlson would be next. So there is some validity there, right? Because they're going to look at anybody that's exposing what they do. Because we, the prophets, have been exposing them on a daily basis, and they're eventually going to come after us. I mean, that's the whole point of this, right? First you get rid of the most popular whistleblowers, and they're eventually going to come after the prophets. These prophets of doom, as Trump calls us. Russia begins 3-day nuclear exercise as Putin due in China for a 2-day visit. This was published on Tuesday, so that's yesterday. Russia launched large-scale nuclear weapons exercises involving tens of thousands of troops as fighting with Ukraine intensifies while President Putin heads to China for a 2-day visit. Exercises come after the collapse of a New START treaty, the last remaining nuclear arms treaty agreement between Russia and the U.S., which officially ended in February and removed key limits on both countries' nuclear arsenals. Russia will conduct ballistic and cruise missile test launches during the maneuvers. The ministry added that the exercise will include coordination with Belarus regarding the joint training and use of nuclear weapons deployed on the territory of the Republic of Belarus. So there you go. 200 million of these ICBMs will be fired across the four corners of the earth, which includes Orezhnik missile systems, etc. These will be used with nuclear weapons, of course. Trump threatens Iran with a big hit if deal isn't reached in the coming days. Oh, so he's threatening to nuke them again. Well, I mean, I've been saying it 2 or 3 days, maybe Friday, Saturday morning, something maybe early next week, a limited period of time, because we can't let them have a nuclear weapon. I don't care about anybody else, just as long as they don't have a nuclear weapon. I don't care about the people that are hard-working. I don't give a shit about hard-working Americans that are struggling to pay off. I don't think about that at all. All I care about is whether they have a nuclear weapon. That's what everybody heard. Latest threat comes a day after he claimed he was holding off plans to strike Iran. So this is even more recent than the other one. He claimed on Tuesday that he was just an hour away from ordering the attack. We're all set to go. It could have been happening right now, he said. So, Iran warrants a swift response after Trump says he halted the planned attack. So they're getting ready too. Trump said he had instructed the military to remain ready to launch a comprehensive and large-scale attack against Iran at any moment if no acceptable agreement is reached. He also said that Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates asked him to postpone the planned military attack against Iran because serious negotiations were underway, with a chance of reaching a deal that would be very acceptable. Pentagon urged no resumption of strikes as Iran grew more effective tracking U.S. air operations. So this is another thing, is they're well aware of any plan and they're ready to hit. So that's another reason why he halted the attack. They'd be ambushed in the retaliatory strikes. President Trump had on Monday announced that he agreed to pause planned strikes, which were supposedly going to resume Tuesday because United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia asked him to, as they said on the sides are getting close to a deal. However, Pentagon officials told the New York Times they urged halting of strikes because of intelligence shows Iran has grown more effective at tracking U.S. air operations and strengthening its air defenses, making the potential for significant aerial losses by the U.S. a greater likelihood in any major campaign. So, like everything else, though, ready to intercept. It's happening. The weak are saying they are strong, and Iran has gotten more popular within the last few months just because of what Trump did. 10 countries condemn Israeli attack against Gaza-bound humanitarian flotilla. As you know, they invaded and just totally destroyed everything, and arrested everybody. Foreign ministers of 10 countries strongly condemn Israeli attack. They won't do anything against the global Samud flotilla, peaceful civilian humanitarian mission attempted to break the blockade against Gaza and deliver aid to the Palestinian people. These attacks, including assaults on vessels and the arbitrary detention of activists, constitute clear violation of international law and international humanitarian law, statement read. So, like everything else, Israeli state continues to do whatever it wants. You know, a lot of them say publicly that they condemn, but they don't do anything about it. Turkey condemns Israelis' new act of piracy against Gaza aid flotilla. But, you know, until they do something, you know, Israeli state continues on. Now, I got one more video here from another brother, but, you know, we're just going to get into this a little bit. And, of course, this is picking up from where Apostle Tahar and Apostle Ramlov was getting into about the 7 vials being different than the 7 trumpets and the 7 seals. And this one's a bit different because this is the repercussions of taking the MOTB. And there's a brother breaking down a very particular verse, which I'm going to get into that as well as we close this out. Revelation chapter 16, it reads, "And I heard a great voice come out of the temple saying to the 7 angels, Go your ways and pour out the vials of wrath of Yahweh upon them, upon the earth. And the first went and poured out his vial upon the earth, and there fell a noisome and grievous sore upon the men which had the mark of the beast, and upon them that worshipped his image." So that's very clear what that is, that you're going to see boils, you know, terrible sores on them. You know, I believe that's from the radiation and everything else generated from having them an implantable chip inside of them. You know, the radiation fallout, you know, causing these terrible boils. The second angel poured out his vial upon the sea, and it became as blood of the dead men. And every living soul died in the sea. You know, and that's plural. You know, it's, you know, pretty much, though, there's going to be much, much death everywhere. Blood everywhere. And the third angel poured out his vial upon the rivers and fountains of waters, and they became blood. See? Just going to be total bloodshed, chaos everywhere. You know, murder, you know, kill or be killed. And I heard the angel of the waters say, Thou art righteous, O Lord Yahweh, who art and was and shall be, because thou hast judged us. For they have shed the blood of saints and prophets, and thou hast given them blood to drink, for they are worthy. In other words, they're getting to taste the wrath of Yahweh. And that's what's coming. I heard another out of the altar say, Even so, Lord Yahweh, almighty, true, and righteous are thy judgments. So, you know, another brother's getting into one particular verse, and I'm just going to let that play. So hopefully all this has been edifying. For that, I will say, Bracha the Yahweh, Bracha the Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakakadosh, Wa Abba. Brakatam, Jehovah elect, Shalom.
Shalom. Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem, Rakak, Wadash. Bill Barnes, the Apostle Elsbury Millstone. Shalom to Hopeful Lake, the call from Gmail's Cleveland Camp, but we're going to find lesson. Getting straight into it. This is Revelation 16:12. And the 6th angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, and the water thereof was dried up, that the way of the kings of the east might be prepared. Okay, so the video. So again, see prophecy playing out. Again, Revelation 16:12 is not going to be long. It's going to be straight to the point and read it again. And the 6th angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, and the water thereof was dried up, that the way of the kings of the east might be prepared. Okay, I'm going to read this in the NLT. It says, Then the 6th angel poured out his bowl on the great Euphrates river, and it dried up, so that the kings from the east could march their armies toward the west without hindrance. Okay, you see that. You see this, the marker that Esau has right there. Okay, so that way you can see, you know, the water level. You see right there, you want to see that top part. Okay, it says back in 2003, and now you see where it's at modern day time. The whole damn thing is open. You see that also right here what it used to look like. Now you see what modern day looks like. Being dried up. Okay, that's a prophecy. How about Shai is causing that to happen? Right? These are prophetic signs and warnings. So we're at the end of days, man. Okay, the end of the days of Esau, even so-called white man. We're at the end of his world, at the end of his rulership, and it's a beautiful time. For you all Israelite men, okay, you in your right mind, it's a beautiful time. We're at the downfall of our enemy. All our enemies, man. We're at the downfall of all our enemies, all the heathen nations, all the wicked men and women of our nation that side with the heathen. Okay, we're at the fall of them, man. We're at the beginning of our world. Okay, the beginning is coming. Sega 6 and 9 for Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob's the beginning of it that follows, man. We're at the very end of the demonic, wicked rulership of the whole earth this morning, man. We're at the beginning of paradise, paradise, righteousness, all right? Third world coming quickly. We're in World War III already, man. We're going to say this is going to intensify and escalate. Okay, we got more and more talks about the mark of the beast, the microchip. Okay, so we're seeing this is real quick. I just want to touch on that, man. Revelation 16:12. Okay, the Euphrates River being dried up. So damn, give all praise on and glory to Yahweh, Shalom, Shabbat, Shem, Kakadash. Bill Barnes, the Apostle Elsbury Millstone, Shalom, Hopeful Lake. Don't give up hope. Shalom.